Sure. Hi, everyone. Welcome to session 5 of the Holistic Health Series. This event is hosted by the University Health Network's Red Blood Cell Disorders Clinic. The focus is on supporting mental health and well-being from a holistic lens. I'm Colleen, and I'm the nurse practitioner at Toronto General, and I will be co-hosting today's session.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sindhu, and I'm a social worker also at Toronto General's Red Blood Cell Disorders Clinic. So we would like to open with a land acknowledgement. And we do this to recognize the lands that we are on, as well as to identify and confront colonization and white supremacy on Turtle Island. So we're meeting on a virtual space here today. So I encourage you to reflect on the lands that you're joining us from. And today I'm speaking from the RBCD clinic, which operates in what is colonially known as Toronto. This land is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Anishinaabe Nation, including the Mississauga of the New Credit and the Wendat and other Indigenous nations since time immemorial. Today, this land is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people.
Long before this land was stolen, it was and continues to be protected by the dish with one spoon, an agreement among allied Indigenous nations to share and care for the land and resources around the Great Lakes. This land is also subject to the Geswantha, an agreement originally made between the Haudenosaunee and the Dutch. The Geswantha is a living treaty that articulates relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples based on peace, friendship, non-interference, and respect for each other's ways.
So I wanted to reflect and share that I come to this land as the child of Tamil immigrants and refugees from Sri Lanka. This land has provided refuge for my family and also an opportunity to go to school and work. I reflect that many Indigenous peoples don't share in those privileges due to the ongoing legacy of colonization. I am committed to learn about the ongoing impacts of colonialism, and I come with respect and reverence for the land.
And I am of settler colonial ancestry. My great-great-grandparents came from England, Scotland, and Ireland to Canada. My family has lived and worked on Indigenous land and reaped those benefits. While farming the land, my father would bring across Indigenous artifacts and show those to his children, reminding us that we are not the first to inhabit and live off the land. I acknowledge and continue to learn about the impacts of colonization and respect this land that I am on today and for the people who have and do reside here. We also acknowledge that anti-Black racism persists in healthcare, education, housing, child welfare, employment, immigration, and justice systems. These systemic inequities can be directly traced to the legacy of the enslavement of African and African descent peoples, which happened in Canada. We also recognize the excellence of Black communities, including resistance as well as contributions to Canadian society. Today, when we talk about mental health, we ground the series on how anti-Black racism and oppression impact well-being and access to care. I'm now thrilled to welcome Reena Ruparelia, who will be continuing the series with a presentation on mindfulness, self-compassion, with a special focus for people with sickle cell, thalassemia, and other red blood cell disorders, as well as their supports. Reena is a mindfulness advocate and psoriasis warrior who has dedicated her life to helping others find peace and healing through the practice of mindfulness. After being diagnosed with psoriasis, a chronic autoimmune disease that affects the skin, Reena turned to mindfulness meditation as a way to manage the stress and anxiety associated with the condition. Please join me in welcoming Reena.
Welcome, everyone. All right. Okay, so good evening. Thank you for being here. As mentioned, I'm Reena Ruparelia, work in the area of wellness and mindfulness. Absolutely my passion and an honor, again, to share these practices that have been around for so many years. So I'm going to be the guide for cultivating a mindful cultivating mindful self-compassion. All right. So I want to thank Sinthu, Colleen, and James again for this opportunity to be here with all of you this evening, and of course, the Red Blood Cell Disorders Clinic for creating this 5-part series. I also want to say a warm welcome to all of you living with sickle cell disease, thalassemia, and other red blood cell disorders, as well as those of you who offer support. Thank you for being here. I hope that this session will be beneficial for you, that you'll be able to get some good takeaways that you'll be able to use in your day-to-day life. But before we kind of get into it, I wanted to review the last session that we did in case you weren't here. And I know it's posted on the blog and will be available in case you want to go back and dive into that. So today is part 5, our last session of the 5-part series. And my colleague, Aisha Santish, facilitated sessions 1 to 3, where she really honed in on mental health. And during our last session, session 4, I shared an introduction to mindfulness, where we covered, what mindfulness is, what it isn't. And if you're not familiar with mindfulness, it is a basic human ability to be fully present, right? Aware of where we are and what we're doing without being overly reactive or consumed with everything going on around us. I like to say it's a type of awareness where we don't have judgment, we exercise patience and curiosity. Some of the benefits we also went through, which include, reducing our stress levels, improving sleep, helping with our emotional well-being, as well as helping to manage pain. And we explored a variety of exercises, including a mindful check-in, which we'll do today, and I'll guide you through, as well as another exercise called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where we explored all of our senses. We did a calming breath, which was the 2 to 1 breath. And that's where you extend your out breath to your in breath. So you kind of double the out breath. So if you were breathing in, let's say for a count of 3, you would try to breathe out for a count of 6. And that brings a really calming sensation to the body. And finally, we wrapped up with a body scan meditation where we scanned 4 parts of our body. I also shared a little bit of my experience living with psoriasis, as Colleen mentioned earlier, a chronic inflammatory skin condition that was all over my body and still continues to flare at times on my hands and my feet. But it causes a lot of pain, discomfort, isolation, shame. So when I was reading, about what many of you might be experiencing, it seemed obviously different but similar. And so my heart goes out to you as someone who also lives with a chronic condition, and may we find our way and our peace through our journeys. But mindfulness has been absolutely pivotal in helping me reframe the way I view myself and my condition, and really empowered me to begin asking myself better questions and starting to take care of myself. And self-compassion specifically, which we'll get in today, has really helped me bring a more kind, gentle lens in the way that I speak to myself and the way that I treat myself. But before we kind of get into today's session, I thought, because we're all coming from different spaces and places, we could do a moment to check in with ourselves. So as I mentioned, last week we started with an exercise called a mindful check-in. And if you're not familiar, this is a short formal practice where you check in with how you're doing in this moment, right? I like to think of it as taking an internal scan of the weather, right? Seeing what's going on inside of us, where we're noticing our physical sensations, any thoughts that may be coming up, along with emotions that are present in this moment. Also acknowledging that these are always shifting and changing, right? So we're just checking in at this moment. And when we start to, investigate or look at these 3 areas, right? Our physical sensations, our emotions, and our thoughts, they provide a direct connection to our lived experience, and therefore a resource that's always available during a mindfulness practice. And checking in this way, it helps us start to get more familiar with how we're feeling. Many of us are in autopilot, caught in our heads, thinking about the past and the future, not always connected to our bodies and our emotions, even our thoughts in a conscious way. So checking in this way really helps us reconnect, reboot, and rebalance the mind and the body. So let's try this. I will guide you through. So If you want to just settle into a comfortable seat, so if you're sitting on a chair, I'm going to invite you to plant both feet onto the ground. You can straighten the back. It doesn't need to be stiff, but a little bit straighter. Maybe rolling the shoulders up to the ears and allowing them to melt down and back. You can allow your hands to rest on your lap. Perhaps allowing the back of your head to lift up and tucking the chin. Softening your forehead, your eyebrows, your eyes. Maybe allowing the tongue to hang heavy and unhooking the jaw if you're clenching. And if it feels comfortable for you, I invite you to close your eyes. But if it doesn't, feel free to just gaze down at a spot in front of you. And just taking a moment to settle into this mindful posture, doing any other adjustments that'll help you feel alert and awake. And when you're ready, just emptying the air out of the body, so breathing out. And when you're ready, breathing in through the nose or mouth, a deeper than usual breath for yourself. So breathing in to a comfortable peak, filling the body with fresh, clean oxygen, and breathing out through the mouth or the nose slowly, letting the day go. Again, breathing in fresh, clean air into the body, new moment. And when you're ready, allow the body to relax as you breathe out. And one more time, breathing in. And releasing it all. Taking a moment before we get into checking in with ourselves and just appreciating yourself for taking the time to be here this evening. Thanking yourself. Thank you. Now I'd love for you to bring your attention and perhaps even a sense of curiosity to the experience in your body. Maybe just scanning from head to toe slowly and noticing what sensations are calling your attention. Just seeing what you notice in your body. Maybe you feel a throbbing sensation in your knee, maybe a tingling in the fingers, an itch in the forehead. There's no right or wrong here, but just bring some curiosity and attention to what sensations you can notice inside of the body, and not judging them as right or wrong, good or bad, just allowing yourself to focus on what's calling for your attention. And if you're unable to feel anything at all, being okay with that too. Just accepting what's here for you in your body in this moment. What can I notice? Just a few more breaths here. And now taking this lens of your attention and bringing it to your thoughts. We have about 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. So just notice what's on your mind right now. What are you thinking about? Maybe you're thinking about what you need to do after this conversation you had earlier. Maybe you're focused on my voice. Just see what thoughts pop up, maybe looking at them as clouds passing in the sky. You don't need to follow them, but allow your thoughts to come up and just notice. What am I thinking right now? What's here? Just a couple breaths as you notice your thoughts. And finally, allowing your attention now to drift onto your emotional self. What are you feeling right now? What emotions can you be aware of? Perhaps there's a nervousness. Perhaps you feel calm, happy, worried, numb. Just notice what you can feel and perhaps even trying to name it for yourself if you have the vocabulary. But if not, just noticing what you're feeling. How am I doing in this moment? Remembering there's no right or wrong. We're each having our own experience. What am I feeling? What can I notice? And on your next out breath, I allow you to let go of noticing your feelings or emotional self and just zoom out to feel yourself sitting here, the weight on the chair, maybe your feet on the floor. Just allow yourself to feel your breath as it comes in and out of the body. Maybe just following it from the nose or the mouth, through the back of the throat, down the chest, perhaps into the belly as you breathe in. And as you breathe out, following the breath out as it goes stomach, chest, throat, nose or mouth. Just feeling your whole body as you follow your breath in and out. Just being with yourself fully in this moment for one more breath. And before we come back to the screen, acknowledging yourself again and your willingness to show up and be present for yourself, knowing that in this way you are contributing to your well-being. When you're ready, you can begin to move the body, maybe fluttering the eyes open or bringing the gaze up to the screen gently. Thank you for being open to that practice if you were able to participate. I love to do this practice a few times a day. Like I said, many of us disconnected from what we're thinking, what we're feeling, what body sensations are going on, unless they're very pronounced. So even as a practice, as you get familiar, maybe just checking in when you wake up, you can just take a couple of breaths and just check in with, what am I thinking right now? What thoughts here? What body sensation am I feeling? What emotion is present? And maybe then again, checking in around lunch, and then again when you go to bed. And, doing this over a few days or over a week, I think for me, what I start to notice is that things change, right? That gives me comfort at times, especially when things are tough. But also if I'm noticing the same thoughts or the same emotions or the same body sensation day after day after day, is this something I need to pay attention to? So it's just a way, again, for us to begin to reconnect with ourselves in a deeper way, and maybe in turn, really give ourselves what we need. Yes. So I'm curious to know if you feel inclined, what's something you noticed during the mindful check-in? Maybe you want to share a body sensation you felt or an emotion, a thought, maybe how that experience was for you, if it was difficult to focus. So just taking a moment maybe to share. And I'll, drifting mind. Yeah, drifting mind. Restless. Took some time to settle in. Yeah, of course, right? Especially when we're coming in from being busy or on the go or from a different space. Thank you so much. Um, Irritation. Thank you for your honesty. Yeah, thank you. So what are we going to do today? So today, during the last part of this holistic health series, we are going to talk about mindful self-compassion. And what we'll look at when we look at mindful self-compassion is what it actually is, along with the three parts, which is self-kindness, common humanity, aka connectedness, as well as mindfulness. We'll also explore the difference between self-compassion versus self-criticism, kind of the opposite, as well as self-compassion and self-esteem, because they can get a little confusing. And we'll do some exercises throughout, just sprinkling these in. So again, you can get a taste of what mindful self-compassion is, because the best way to learn, is to experience it versus me talking about it. And then hopefully you'll be able to get some tools that you can take into your own self-care toolbox. And at the end, as mentioned, we'll take some time for some discussion or some question and answer. So just to get a feel for the group here, just so I can understand, when you think of the word self-compassion, what comes to mind, right? What synonyms or what words come to mind that could relate to self-compassion? Yeah, treating yourself nicely, empathy, gentle. Yes. Self-care, kindness. Perfect. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we all have this down. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Same for me. I think of the word tenderness, empathy, grace, that we extend towards ourselves. And I think, when living with health conditions, it's a way that we can start to care for ourselves and be gentle with ourselves, and give ourselves what we need, because it can be a challenging road. Kristen Neff, who's a pioneer and a leader in this space and someone I've studied extensively, she describes self-compassion like this. She says, self-compassion is when we are kind and understanding rather than harshly self-critical when we experience difficulty or we feel inadequate. We give ourselves support and encouragement rather than being cold and judgmental when challenges and difficulties arise in our lives. And so for me, what really stands out is this kind and understanding rather than self-critical. Right? Kind and understanding, especially when we experience difficulty, right? Giving ourselves support and encouragement instead of being cold and judgmental when difficulty arises, right? So it's how we treat ourselves, especially in those tough moments. And I think, to understand self-compassion, we need to also understand self-criticism. Self-criticism, as I'm sure many of us have experienced to varying degrees, it relates to that inner voice, right? That voice in our heads that you could say is your inner critic. I think of it like a bit of an inner bully who perhaps insults us or undermines us or criticizes us. And of course, what we hear is going to be different for each and every one of us. But it might sound something like, you're not good enough. You're weak. You're such a failure. It's kind of this mean voice that goes on in our heads. And I know it was a voice that really dominated my thought process, especially when I was going through flare-ups and feeling terrible about myself. And it wasn't very helpful. When I think about self-criticism, it involves this harsh judgment, right? Being excessively unforgiving towards ourselves. It can also kind of strive for us to be a perfectionist, right? And set these unrealistic standards, which can lead to us feeling inadequate or having low self-worth. Can involve this negative self-deprecating talk, right? Focusing on our flaws, our mistakes, our shortcomings, which causes, it can cause emotional distress, which elevates or activates these negative emotions that we have, like guilt, shame, self-doubt. And that can be detrimental to our overall well-being. It also can really erode our self-esteem and how we feel about ourselves, right? When we're engaging in this regular self-criticism, it can really erode our self-esteem and contribute to a negative self-image. And that's where I think self-compassion is really, really important, because there's a different way to relate to ourselves, right? So where self-criticism tells us we're not good enough, self-compassion is an inner friend, right? It's like this inner cheerleader. So if the self-critic is a bully, right, self-compassion is going to be that caregiver, that inner caregiver, that person inside of you that's going to nurture you, who's on your side, who's going to encourage you, support you, believe in you. And it's this support system that brings understanding and care. I think of it like a good friend that cares about you or cares about us and has our best interest at heart, right? So self-compassion involves treating ourselves with care, understanding, kindness, empathy, like we've talked about. It also acknowledges, and accepts our imperfections, our failures, our limitations as being a normal part of being a human being, right? We all experience these things. Self-compassion involves mindfulness, right? As we've talked about, and that helps us recognize and accept our present moment experience without judgment, right? It allows us to see things as they are. It involves more supportive and encouraging self-talk, right? Similar to how we talk to a friend who is struggling or in need. It also helps us become more emotionally resilient, right? Helping us navigate difficult emotions and bounce back from setbacks with greater ease. Self-compassion offers a healthier and more supportive approach to self-care, right? It encourages us to acknowledge our difficulties, our shortcomings, and respond to ourselves, again, with these words I'm going to keep using: kindness and understanding. And by practicing self-compassion, we can foster a more positive and nurturing relationship with ourselves. So we're going to move into our first exercise, and I'm going to give you just a moment. If you have a piece of paper and a pen, you can use, if you're using a phone, maybe you want to use the notepad in your phone, but writing is always effective. I believe a more effective way to actually register things in the brain and really take a moment to think. So if you want to just take a moment to grab a piece of paper and a pen, I will give you that. Just a little. And so we're going to do this exercise, and I'll talk a little bit. So if you're still grabbing your paper and pen, but we're going to do an exercise called treating yourself like a good friend, right? It's easy to give our friends or those people we care about or beings we care about, right? Because I think of my cat. It's easy to give her love, compassion, and understanding, even when they make a mistake or when someone fails. A friend comes to us with, troubles. It's easy to tell them it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. But when we're suffering, it's harder to extend that same understanding and compassion to ourselves, especially in the face of difficulty or when we make a mistake or experience a challenge. I know when I've made mistakes, I have been so mean to myself, and if I've called a good friend, they've often reframed this for me and been so kind. And so this exercise is going to help you reflect on how you would treat a friend versus how you treat yourself. And the invitation here is just to write and to be open and to bring some awareness to how we can treat ourselves with a little more self-compassion. So let's take a breath in and out when you're ready, emptying the air out of the lungs. When you're ready, breathing in and breathing out. All right, let's start. Fresh moment. So first, I want you to think about a time, okay? A close friend or someone you care about has come to you and they felt really bad about themselves or they're having a struggle. If you can't think of an actual scenario, I say make up a hypothetical one. Just picture someone you care about coming to you and telling you about a difficult time. What I want you to write about is, how would you respond to this person in this situation? So maybe you'd write down what you typically do, what you say, and also noting the tone in which you talk to your friend. Okay, so just taking a moment here. We'll take about 2 minutes here. How would you respond to your friend who comes to you with difficulty? Write down what you typically do, what you say, and note the tone in which you're talking to them. So I'll do this with you. Let's take 30 more seconds here. Okay. Right. Just want to make sure it changed over. So now think about a time when you felt bad about yourself or you were struggling, right? You've made a mistake, you're not feeling that great. How do you typically respond to yourself in these situations? So, again, writing down what you typically do, what you say to yourself, and the tone in which you talk to yourself. So, just noting that. How do you speak to yourself in these situations? So, again, we'll take another couple of minutes here. We'll just take 30 more seconds here, maybe 50. Okay. So moving into part 3 here. So looking at how, in question 1, how you treat a friend or someone that's close to you and how you treat yourself in these situations. What differences do you notice, if any? So do you notice a difference? I know when I've written this down, I notice a difference. So for you, if you've noticed a difference, think about what factors or fears even, what comes into play that leads you to treat yourself and others differently. What are the differences and why do you think you do that? What's coming into play? So just again, being curious with this, not needing a definitive answer, but perhaps just wondering, why do I do that? And what's contributing to that? So we'll take a minute to dive into that. Thank you for those who are sharing in the chat as well. Yeah, it's very relatable. Being self-critical or being harsher with ourselves. I'll just take another 30 seconds here to think about, are we treating ourselves differently and what's different here? Yeah. So I'm here, I'm hearing here, or I'm reading in the chat, we're harsher. Sometimes someone's reflecting they're harsher with themselves, maybe due to perfectionism. Yeah. And that goes into the self-critic as well, because I feel that I can do better versus I feel that my friend did their best or his best. Yeah. To my friends, I give positive and uplifting words, and to myself, I say the most horrible criticisms. Yeah, you're not alone in that, you know? And I'm going to invite you to thank you for this reflection. It obviously is relatable to all of us. So if we look at number 4 here, right, I'm going to invite you to reflect on this. The invitation here is to write down how you think things might change if you responded to yourself in the same way you respond to a close friend or someone you care about when you're suffering. So what if you treated yourself in that way? Yeah, protecting your friends from beating themselves up. Yeah. So what would be different? Let's say that you treated yourself like a friend. How do you think things could be different in terms of your experience? Bad things happening to me versus others. Yeah. Right. We have that worry loop. We want to protect our friends. So how do you think things would be different if you talk to yourself in that way? A lot of the time we think, if we're kind to ourselves, we're letting ourselves off the hook. We somehow think if we're self-critical or mean to ourselves that we're helping ourselves. Or sometimes it's just default, right? We just grew up in a way that maybe that's the voice we heard around us, or that's the voice we learned to use with ourselves. And when we're going through challenges, I think especially with our health, I know for me, it hasn't helped when I haven't held my own hand or haven't been there for myself. At times I give myself a moment to be frustrated, but I know being mean to myself has never helped me. It's never helped me feel better. And, I always try to tell my body, like, you're doing your best, probably to perform better. Yeah. Maybe I would end up maybe I wouldn't. Yeah. It's like family. So I try to say helpful things. Yeah. Perhaps, right? If we were able to respond to ourselves, I'm seeing here, we might be able to perform better. Maybe we wouldn't go down this hole of feeling sad or the rabbit hole of feeling depressed or upset. Maybe prioritizing ourselves. I think that's so true too, right? We put everyone's needs ahead of our own. When we ask ourselves what we need and be there for ourselves, maybe we would prioritize ourselves. Thank you, everyone, for that reflection. And I think, again, one moment being praised and the next moment getting cut down. Yeah, absolutely. So that's maybe where it can come from. Right. That voice we grew up with. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. So, I did ask this question, but it feels like everyone's kind of answering. And I wanted to say, did you notice a difference between how you're treating yourself and how you're treating? Oh, thank you for putting it on mute. So how we treat ourselves and how we treat others. But it seems here, I was going to ask you yes or no. It seems that there is a significant difference, or a difference at least in how we treat ourselves and how we treat a friend. And perhaps, the next time you do go through difficulty or a hard time, seeing if you can pretend that you're talking to a friend, or seeing if you can turn that lens of compassion, self-compassion on yourself. Say, how can I treat myself a little differently now? How can I be there for myself even 2% more than I was before? And I think doing an exercise like this doesn't necessarily solve, our inner dialogue, or resolve it rather, but it does bring a sense of awareness, right? A sense of kind of saying, okay, I do this and I have the opportunity to maybe close this gap and give myself that care. Right. So we're going to move into the next part. And I quickly wanted to talk about the 3 parts of self-compassion. And it may sound a bit redundant because I've talked about these things a little bit, but I think they're important, especially when you leave and you're trying to think about what is self-compassion. So Kristen Neff, as I mentioned, has done a lot of research in this area. And this is her research where she talks about the 3 parts of self-compassion. And the first being self-kindness, right? This is something I think many of us work on cultivating. And it's this attitude of being supportive and understanding, warm and caring towards ourselves, especially in the face of suffering, failure, or feeling inadequate, rather than punishing ourselves, right, with self-criticism. And as we work on being kinder to ourselves in this way, we're able to see that imperfection, failure, difficulties are inevitable, right? And thus we can start to be more gentle with ourselves when we're confronted with these distressing thoughts, unpleasant experiences, rather than getting angry with ourselves when life falls short or we don't meet these self-imposed ideals, right? The second component, obviously, mindfulness, which we went through in great detail on session 4. And self-compassion is intimately tied to the practice of mindfulness. And you might remember, right, from the last session and what I said earlier, mindfulness is when we're paying attention to the present moment with acceptance and non-judgment. And it's what creates this foundation of self-awareness and non-judgmental observation of our experience, right? So we notice this is a moment of suffering, or this is a moment of pain, or this is a difficult moment. We don't judge it or criticize ourselves or take it in a way that's good or bad, but instead we say, this is where I'm at, and this is what's happening. This is how I'm feeling. It's not good or bad, right or wrong. This is it. And when we're thinking of pain, like I know that, we can't ignore our pain or even get rid of it by being mindful, but we can feel compassion for ourselves when we're going through a rough time. And through self-compassion, we can start to accept our negative experiences as being present rather than suppress them, which I did a lot, or completely ignore them, right? I just kept moving. I didn't want to acknowledge the difficulty, which I think, again, can feel uncomfortable. But when we start to acknowledge what's here, we can start to give ourselves what we need. And the third and final component, I think is very important, is connectedness, which is also known as common humanity. And this helps us develop a connection and understanding with others, right? It reduces this feeling of feeling isolated, like we're the only one. So like when we're self-compassionate, we recognize that challenges, failures, difficulties are something that we all share, right? Even just reading the chat today, even being here on the call, we all go through difficulties in our lives. And by understanding that this is part of the human experience, it can start to help us understand that suffering is something we all go through, and it can start to negate some of those feelings of feeling like you're the only one. And through the cultivation of all 3 parts, right? Self-kindness, mindfulness, and connectedness. Mindfulness-based self-compassion can help us foster an emotional well-being and resilience, and be more compassionate to ourselves and build this new relationship with how we treat ourselves, right? It's kind of unlearning how we were or how we used to talk to ourselves and starting to practice being more compassionate. So before we move into the next exercise, I just quickly wanted to outline the difference between self-compassion and self-esteem. They're related, but they're a little different, okay? So self-compassion, as we just talked about, is based on self-kindness and acceptance. Regardless of what we've achieved, external validation, we're worthy because we are, right? Just because we're a human being, we're worthy. Self-compassion assumes that. Where self-esteem, on the other hand, right, it often relies on external factors, the accomplishments we have, and that's what determines our self-worth, right? It's things outside of us. Self-compassion offers understanding and support, right? As I've mentioned, in the face of failure or in the face of making a mistake. It recognizes that setbacks are part of life, right? It allows for self-forgiveness. Where self-esteem is a little more vulnerable, right? It's going to be more vulnerable to fluctuations when we're faced with failure, because it's closely tied to our success and our achievements. And as we just talked about, self-compassion emphasizes a common humanity, right? Our interconnectedness with each other. And that fosters more empathy and compassion towards ourselves, but also to others. promotes a sense of belonging, a sense of understanding. And self-esteem, while it can contribute to us having positive interactions socially, it can sometimes lead us to comparing ourselves or competing with others to maintain this sense of superiority. So both self-compassion and self-esteem play important roles in our well-being. But as you can see here, self-compassion offers a more stable and unconditional way to build self-worth and resilience. And it's not contingent upon what you accomplish. It's not a contingent on external factors, right? Instead, self-compassion here provides us with an accepting attitude towards ourselves, and it promotes emotional well-being. All right, so we're going to move into our next exercise called supportive touch. This is an easy, accessible way to comfort yourself when you're not feeling your best. And during the pandemic, I was living alone. I was on my own a lot, and I felt pretty sad a lot of the time, especially when I was going through flare-ups or sickness or moments of sickness. And I practiced this exercise as a way to soothe myself. And like I said, it's also a really accessible way to soothe yourself when you're feeling stressed or your body's not feeling its best or you're even having a tough day emotionally. You see, like when we use touch, even our own touch on ourselves, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, right? And that's associated with our rest and relax. It's the calming part of our nervous system that can help us feel safe, calm, at ease. And although I always like to say it can feel a bit awkward to do an exercise like this, even embarrassing at first, over time with regular practice, perhaps it'll start to feel more familiar to you. It's also important to remember that our body doesn't register embarrassment in that way, right? That's more emotions, our mind. But our body actually, our skin is a very sensitive organ. And research shows that, touch releases oxytocin, right? That feeling, that hormone that's related to connectedness, to love. And it also provides a sense of security. It soothes distressing emotions and calms our cardiovascular stress. So our own touch can be a very soothing thing. So why not just try? And if it's for you, please, continue to practice in times that you're feeling calm as well, so you can start to get more of a familiarity. And if it's not for you, that's okay too. But just give it a shot and see if this is something that'll work for you. All right. So we're going to begin. I'm going to actually go through a number of different variations so you can see what works for you. But what I'd like you to do first, as we always do, we kind of clear the slate, and we're going to take 2 breaths, 2 deeper than usual breaths, just to clear the slate, and I'll guide you through the next part. So just emptying the air out of your lungs when you're ready. So breathing out fully. And then I invite you to breathe in through the nose or the mouth to a comfortable peak. When you're ready, maybe breathing out the mouth. Again, breathing in to a comfortable peak. And allowing the breath to release out of the body, maybe even sighing. Ah. Now the invitation here is to take one of your hands and gently place it on your chest or your heart area. Just maybe feeling a gentle pressure and the warmth of your hand. Maybe you feel your chest rising and falling as you continue to breathe. Maybe you feel your heartbeat. Just notice how it feels to have your hand on your heart. Maybe even bringing your other hand and putting it over. So both hands on your heart as you breathe in and out. Just notice if there's a difference between 1 or 2 hands. Just feeling the touch of the hand on your chest as you breathe. And if you wish, maybe you want to make small circles with one of your hands or both of your hands in this heart area. Perhaps even playing with the pressure of your fingertips in your hand, the direction, just noticing how you feel. Taking one more breath with the hand on the heart. All right, you can take the hand down and we're going to try some other variations because I know sometimes it can be uneasy for individuals putting a hand over the heart. So let's try some other ones. I'm going to demonstrate each one for a couple of breaths and join me for the ones that feel good. If you have another variation that you feel curious about or you want to try yourself, please go ahead and do that too. Just meeting yourself where you are today. So the first one I'm going to invite you to do, if it feels good for you, is just put a hand on your cheek. Again, playing with pressure, just choosing which hand feels best. Maybe you want to try the left or the right. Just putting a hand on your cheek, just taking a breath in and out, just noticing what it feels like. The next invitation is to cradle your face in your hands. I really like to let my chin get heavy here on my hands. So again, feeling the breath as it comes in and out as you cradle your face. The next variation is to just gently stroke your arms, and maybe you want to do one at a time. Maybe you just want to do the bottom part of your arm. Maybe you want to do both. Just playing again around with where and how you choose to soothe yourself or gently stroke your arms. I like to use my fingertips and kind of swirl around, giving yourself this supportive touch as you breathe and explore. Next thing I'll invite you to do is to cross your arms around your body, either your chest or your stomach, and just give yourself a gentle squeeze. I like to give myself a little bit of a harder hug. Just giving yourself a hug even. The last one we're going to try here is putting one hand on your abdomen, so the lower part of your stomach, and one on your chest. And just again, taking a moment here to breathe and comfort yourself with your supportive touch. Just feeling the air coming in and out. Okay, and let it go. Another one actually is cupping your hands and having those in your lap if that feels good for you. So again, maybe you explore some of these supportive touches during the week and see how it feels for you, because it may be a wonderful way, again, to soothe yourself and to give yourself some comfort. So which supportive touch felt best for you? Did you try any other variation that felt good? Did any of these feel comforting to you? Maybe you can let me know in the chat as I continue on with the session. I'd love to hear. All right, so I'll quickly go through the benefits before we move into our last exercise, which is a beautiful meditation all around being self-compassionate. Yeah, I like to give myself face massage. Okay, and facial touch. That's good. Yeah. Oh, it's just that it's so soothing to take care of ourselves. And also for me was very foreign to care for myself, always looking outside. So this is a great way to return home to our body. So mindfulness self-compassion offers several benefits, but I want to offer a few that we've talked about, but I'll give a little more detail. And of course, we give ourselves this emotional support. right? We give ourselves emotional support and comfort during difficult moments, which again, in turn, reduces these feelings of isolation and helps promote overall emotional well-being. It can help reduce the way that we judge ourselves, the way that we are so, judgmental to our mistakes, to our struggles, to our limitations. So we're more self-compassionate versus self-critical. We release self-judgment, right? We embrace our limitations with kindness and start to develop, as we've mentioned, this more nurturing relationship with ourselves. Mindful self-compassion also enhances the self-care that we give ourselves, right? Self-compassion is related to self-care, as you can see in some of the things that we've done. And when living with chronic illness, we often need to prioritize self-care practices to manage our conditions. And so this begins to give us a moment to encourage us to listen to what we need, as well as support us to make self-nurturing choices. And finally, it helps us build a sort of resilience. Not this resilience, I keep going, but this ability to bounce back from difficulties with more ease, right? It provides us with these inner resources like mindfulness, self-encouragement, self-kindness, and that can help us be more flexible and adaptive, also more expansive, which in turn may give us the opportunity or the ability to cope with the ups and downs of our health and start to maintain a more optimistic outlook, or at least remind ourselves, I'm here for you. Right. So we're going to move into the self-compassion meditation. And I want to say, sometimes when we're meditating, it can feel a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe we might get bored or uneasy. I always want to encourage you to shift your posture to a place that feels good for you, to follow your breath versus my voice if the instructions don't feel right for you, to perhaps offer yourself soothing touch instead, or to lay down, whatever feels good for your body. I will always say, listen to your own inner voice first. And if you feel kind of agitated or irritated, which can happen, see if you can take a breath and return to my instructions. But if it's just not your day, don't give yourself a hard time. You can give yourself that kindness, right? That compassion to say, today's a tough day, and I'm going to let myself take a pause right now. It's all good. Okay. Just want to give you that, because some days I take a lot of courses and I can't sit still all the time, right? It's sometimes a bit of a big ask, especially if my body is talking and if I'm not feeling my best or I'm having a tough day. So I just want to give you that invitation. All right. But I'll go through the meditation again, and I hope that it feels soothing and nourishing for you. So again, finding a comfortable position for you. I'm going to invite you to be seated, but if your body feels better lying down, I invite you to do that as well. If you are sitting on a chair, if you find yourself slouching, just sit up straight. It doesn't need to be stiff, but looking for a posture that will help you feel alert and awake. And if you are in a chair, just again, planting both feet equally onto the ground, even pressing down on the ground will help you feel supported, as well as it'll help you sit a little straighter. And on your next in-breath, I'm going to invite you to bring your shoulders up to your ears. Holding them there for a moment, I also like to scrunch my face and my hands. And then as I breathe out, as you breathe out, allow the shoulders to melt down and back. Allow the facial muscles to relax, the hands to come loose, and rest on your lap. Allowing the chin to tuck, the face to soften. And if you'd like to shut your eyes, if it feels good and safe for you, please do that. Otherwise, gaze down at a spot in front of you on the ground so you can keep your attention. So let's just take one breath to arrive in this meditation and in the body. And when you're ready, emptying the air out of the lungs. And as you breathe in, reaching the spine up. And with the exhalation, relax the body. Let's try that one more time, actually breathing in through the nose or mouth. Reaching the spine up, the body up. And as you breathe out, just letting go. And when you're ready, allowing the breath to return to its natural flow, its natural rhythm. Just feeling the breath as it comes in and out, and allow it to ground you here in this moment. And now I invite you to bring your attention to your heart center, so your chest, the middle of your chest. And visualize a warm, soft, glowing light in this space. Perhaps it's radiating compassion from this center part of your heart. And as you breathe in and out, imagine this light expanding and starting to fill your body from head to toe to fingertips with this comforting light and warmth. As you breathe, picturing this light traveling all through the body, lighting up every part of you. And this warm, glowing light throughout the body. And again, if that's not accessible for you, just allowing yourself to breathe. No need to give yourself a hard time. Doing the best you can today. And now I invite you to gently bring to mind a situation or experience where you feel the need for some self-compassion. It could be a recent mistake or a challenging moment or experience. I'd say try not to pick something too difficult, maybe a 4 out of 10. Just allowing these details to come into your awareness, right? What happened? What's this situation about? And try again to do this without judgment or criticism of yourself. Just bringing to mind this situation or experience. Continuing to breathe as you think of this experience. Maybe even taking a moment to acknowledge any difficult emotions that arise. And maybe even noticing where you feel this emotion in your body, right? In your stomach, your chest, your jaw, your forehead, wherever it is, maybe your left knee. Where do you feel this emotion? Or where do you feel the emotions arise when you think of this situation? And as you continue to breathe, perhaps you want to do a supportive touch or just sit as you are as we offer ourselves the following words of understanding and compassion. So you can either repeat these phrases after me or just silently repeat them to yourself. May I be gentle with myself in times of difficulty or pain. Times of difficulty. May I offer myself forgiveness and understanding. May I offer myself forgiveness and understanding. May I embrace my challenges with compassion and warmth. May I embrace my challenges with compassion. May I offer myself the compassion I need, just as I would a dear friend. May I offer myself compassion, just as I would. Let's try these one more time. May I be gentle with myself in times of difficulty or pain. May I be gentle with myself in times of difficulty. May I offer myself forgiveness and understanding. May I offer myself forgiveness and understanding. May I embrace my challenges with compassion and warmth. May I embrace my challenges with compassion and may I offer myself the compassion I need, just as I would a dear friend. May I offer myself the compassion I need, just as I would a dear friend. Allow these words to sink in and embrace you with kindness and acceptance. And if resistance or self-judgment arises, just gently acknowledge that and bring your attention back to the spirit of self-compassion. Perhaps you imagine wrapping yourself in a warm, comforting embrace, or if it feels good for you, maybe you do give yourself a warm, comforting embrace. And just visualize or feel this embrace as an embodiment of self-compassion, providing a resting space, a space of support, just feeling the care that this gesture or this visualizing of this gesture offers. Just taking a couple of breaths to bask in a compassionate embrace, perhaps allowing it to infuse your cells, infuse your state of being at this moment. Knowing that you can return to a practice like this anytime you need to cultivate some self-care and some self-compassion. So just taking some breaths here in the warmth. When you're ready, you can begin to gently move the body. Flutter the eyes open if they were closed, just coming back to the screen. I hope that was helpful for you. May you carry the warmth of self-compassion with you as you continue your evening, right? Knowing that you have the ability to always offer yourself care, support, understanding, and acceptance. Right, so I'm just going to recap what we went through today before we open it up into our Q&A. So we talked about what self-compassion is, specifically looking at the three elements, the self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. We looked at self-compassion versus self-criticism, as well as self-esteem and self-compassion. We highlight some of these benefits, including the emotional support it gives us and reduce, our self-judgment, as well as start to enhance our self-care. We practiced the writing exercise of treating yourself like you would a friend. We started with the mindful check-in. We offered our self-supportive touch, as well as doing this self-compassion meditation with phrases at the end. So I hope, again, this was helpful. My name's Reena. Thank you for being here, and we'll move into our Q&A. Thank you.